right, welcome to this very special episode of our program Daily Debate. This is a very special episode, and we're just on the corner of 2024 Egypt's presidential elections. Tomorrow we will be seeing the start of the elections abroad. In all the world, the state authorities have already prepared for the 2024 presidential elections. And we are awaiting millions of Egyptians residing abroad to be able to cast their ballots from the 1st till the 3rd of December. On Wednesday, the electoral silence for the elections abroad commenced, with dozens of embassies and consulates in 121 countries welcoming voters from the 9th a.m. to the 9th p.m. according to the local time of each state throughout the three-day duration. Egypt's embassies and consulates around the world have finalized preparations for, or rather to receive the voters. The National Election Authority published a list of the addresses of the embassies and consulates were registered, and voters can see the names easily on the list over online or in the website of the National Election Authorities. Polling stations abroad can be found definitely easily on the National Elections Authorities website. The Ministry of Immigration announced the launch of an operation room to follow up on the voting process abroad and answer the inquiries of all expats around the clock in coordination with the National Election Authorities. All preparations were made so as to facilitate the process of the elections in and outside Egypt, and that has been made in coordination of all the Egyptian institutions all together. Expats can really contact the numbers of the operation rooms for any kind of inquiries, and the process is supposed to be going or ongoing in the most easy way as prepared for this elections. Definitely the abroad and the inside one, or the internal one, we are seeing observers from, or rather from Egypt, and definitely international observers. Many of them are NGOs and human rights, and definitely the Egyptian and the international ones. They are all observing our elections. That Egypt has been keen on being very transparent in presenting it to the whole world. This is the message of Egypt. Everything is made transparently in Egypt. We'll be speaking about the importance of this year's, or the 2024 presidential elections. We'll be speaking about the circumstances surrounding those very particular elections. We'll be speaking also about what would we be expecting at this upcoming stage. We'll be speaking about that with our guest, Professor Mohamed Naguib Abu Zeid, professor at the AUC. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
I guess this is a very special occasion.
Yes, it's a very important and special occasion, not only because it's presidential election, one of the most important event in any nation's events, yearly, quarterly, whatever, but also because of the time and the era we're living in makes this election
Indeed.
Very special one and a pivotal one.
Indeed. Before we delve into our discussion, let me first have the top stories of the day. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi arrived in the United Arab Emirates to participate in the presidential segment of the 28th session of the Conference of the States Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, COP28. Upon his arrival, the head of state held talks with the International Monetary Fund's Executive Director, Kristalina Georgieva, at his residence, which focused on Egypt's ties with the fund in light of the current cooperation program between the two sides, which is aimed at reforming Egypt's economy. President Sisi hailed the fruitful mutual partnership, confirming Egypt's keenness to continue such a partnership thanks to its role in creating positive climate that serves all investors and international financial markets regarding the Egyptian economy and the available investment opportunities. The president is expected to review Egypt's efforts during last year's COP27 at the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, which focused on issues of concerns to develop the region and the African countries. And Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry handed over the presidency of the COP to the United Arab Emirates on Thursday. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ambassador Ahmed Abu Zeid said Minister Shoukry had delivered Egypt's speech during the inaugural session. Delegates from nearly 200 countries convened for the COP28 climate summit in Dubai, where conference host the United Arab Emirates hopes to sell the vision of a low-carbon future that includes non-fossil fuel. And finally, First Lady Mrs. Intisar Assisi visited Palestinian children who are receiving treatment in a hospital in the new administrative capital. Mrs. Intisar wrote on her social media page that her heart is with the Palestinian children whom she visited to inspect the medical care they are receiving. She expressed gratitude for the medical staff in the hospital, saying that they are reflecting the vital role played by Egypt in supporting the Palestinian brothers. Right, welcome back, and moving on to our topic of tonight. And the National Election Authority made final preparations for presidential elections. Let's watch the reporter. We'll come back for more discussion.
The National Elections Authority, headed by Councillor Walid Hamza, called on Egyptians in a press conference to vote in the 2024 presidential elections. He announced the timetable for the elections starting next December 1st for Egyptians abroad and on December 10th for Egyptians at home. Councillor Hamza said the presidential elections will be conducted under a full judiciary supervision so that each judge will be assigned an electoral box. The head of the Commission revealed that the Commission pledges that its work will be respected at home and abroad and that it will be governed by the judge's conscience. He asserted that the Commission stands on the same distance without bias or discrimination. Egyptians will go to the polls in December to elect a president for a 6-year term. Polls will be open at home on the 10th till the 12th of December, while expats will vote on from the 1st till the 3rd of December. The results will be announced on 18th of December, with a runoff from the 8th till the 10th of January in Egypt and from the 5th till the 7th of January abroad if there is no decisive winner.
Right, welcome back. And Egypt is electing, and that is indeed one important event in the life of Egypt. And let me again welcome our guest, Professor Mohamed Naguib Abu Zeid, professor at the AUC. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Right, the presidential elections, and definitely it's different. This year, it's very different.
It's very different for a variety of reasons. One of them, just before the report, I mentioned briefly that it's a pivotal time. I wouldn't exaggerate when I say in the history of the world, because of the global action that are taking place, that in many instances, people have kind of forecast a third world war, some kind of larger conflict. On our scale here, a regional conflict. Heaven forbid, we don't want any of that, not for the world, not for us, but also because Egypt has been going through a lot of paradigm shifts and changing. in its policies. A lot of hopes and plans have been put, vision for growth, for development. So the next 6 years will need definitely a president who will carry the torch and will continue this passage of growth and sustainability for a long time, with safety and security as a prime goal for the country, for the nation, and for the region. So these may sound like normal things to do, but they are all happening in abnormal and unusual circumstances, which means a lot of effort, a lot of, let's say, strategizing, and definitely, a lot of care, coordination, and consultation, and a great support from a nation to the president in taking part of these and carrying out this heavy task.
This is a kind of wrap-up to the whole episode. So if we just divide what you said into segments. Let's speak about the scene of the elections and the preparations, first of all, so that people around the world would understand how Egypt was very keen to present the presidential elections in the the utmost transparent way.
Okay, different things. First of all, the announcement in an early stage of how the process will go. And the kind of organization, whether within Egypt and abroad, and the kind, as your nice report has mentioned clearly, the supervision of judges, and I like the word that came in the report because it's true, and the judges conscious in controlling this process. And we definitely want the world, we as Egyptians, we want the world to see that this election is an election seeking. We are taking, and we have been taking serious steps towards good, well-instilled democracy, and we want this to be reflected in this election. Definitely a challenge, and from here I'll take the opportunity, being here, all the candidates for the presidents, including our President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, urging everyone to go and participate. No one has mentioned this or that, but the participation itself is what makes this experience really a valuable one. We want to hear numbers that are higher than 40 and 50% in terms of participation of the Egyptian people, particularly the youth, who haven't been participating that heavily in previous occasions. So that election has gained momentum in the sense of good preparation, despite all what you see around us here in the region and in the world, but also clarifying it in different ways. If you switch to any of the Egyptian media, like I've done today and before, there are clear, well-announced steps even about how to use your ID for elections, and what are the conditions for your ID to be valid, or if not ID, a passport, and so on. So even the small little technicalities about how to vote, where to vote, is being well organized, I think better than previous times, and that really adds to the vision of wanting and insisting on having the largest possible participation from the Egyptian people in this election.
While you're speaking here, you highlighted 3 issues, sir. Here we're speaking about the National Election Authority, which is managing the whole process, and it is all about judges who are into the process, guarantees made by the state for a transparent and fair process for all candidates, and the third would be measures taken by all the state institutions to facilitate the voting process inside and outside the country. How do you view measures taken by all those institutions all together for such a process?
I see them as effective, and I see them as trying to avoid, let's say, hiccups of the past. We are here speaking with transparency as well in this episode, and we talk about in the past there was a problem in really counting even the eligible voters. This has almost been adjusted by complete national ID for everyone. The validity of those who vote versus those who are not eligible to vote. The alternatives, if you don't have an ID and you're living abroad and you need to use something like your passport and so on, what is right and what's valid and what's not valid. If I were to give an example here, the ID your ID or the voter ID has to highlight an address within Egypt. Otherwise, how would you be voting with an ID where you're not really appear on our screen as somebody who lives somewhere, and therefore you will be belonging to one, let's say, district or and so on. So these technicalities are highlighted, are clear in the minds of the voters, but also we have the judges to supervise that.
If I may speak about observers, definitely in previous elections that Egypt have been seeing, particularly during the past 9 years, we were very much keen to receive the national and international observers. And we've always been keen to show the whole process in a very transparent way. This year we have Nazaha. We'll speak more about Nazaha in another report, but how do you view Egypt's keenness on that and on showing the whole process and the whole show before the whole world?
Two things I must say in this particular topic. First of all, the larger base or foundation for voters is the first guarantee of a sound and good and valid elections. And that's our prime target. Our president has eluded that, and I remember or can hear him verbatim asking the people and pleading to the people to please go and vote with all their hearts, no matter where their vote goes. So that's one part. The second part, which is actually more important, is that this kind of voting have to be based on knowledge of whom you're voting for. I have seen, and I think the Egyptian people have seen, the candidates presenting their views, I would say, in various TV channels, in media, and so on. So the concept, and I'm not talking here about this candidate or that candidate, the concept that you vote based on knowledge, based on some kind of plan or a vision is very essential. We want to instill that in ourselves because it didn't happen that much in the past, but we want to see it in the future, in the very soon future, in the coming few days, but also beyond that. I'm voting for this person or that person because he or she has presented to me this program, and he or she is accountable to certain deliverables. And this concept hasn't been that strong. Popularity is always good. You need popularity and voters to come and support you. If we talk about parliamentary election, which is not our topic today, you'll find people in a village or in a kafr or in a governorate, they have their own people, families and supporters around them. This is different. We're talking about the president of the largest country in Africa, one of the most important countries in the world, and I don't say that because I'm an Egyptian.
No, it's true.
But it's a pivotal one. So you need to be very knowledgeable and very articulate about whom you're going to elect and what is the program that he or she, if we're speaking general, if we're talking in general, is going to deliver. And the knowledge and the accountability after election is what makes the whole process and whole experience a valid one.
And awareness, because that needs lots and lots of awareness of the people, and that is another issue that we can speak on in other episodes. Before I go to showing what is Nazaha coalition and how will the whole process would be observed, let me here take this question. How is the world's eyes very much focused on the elections of Egypt, and why? Particularly those very particular days.
Okay, I love the question, by the way. Let me take the second one. Why? Well, talking about 110 plus million individuals in one of the greatest, oldest civilization in the world, a pivotal country or a prime country in Africa, together with South Africa and Nigeria, are the largest three economies in the continent, not to mention the history behind Egypt within the African context, talking about the Arab world and the Middle East and the conflicts around us, and the voice of wisdom that comes often from Egypt, and the stability that always offered by Egypt.
The cornerstone, definitely, of stability.
let me reflect the question back to everyone. How much the world is going or is willing to take a risk by having a country as heavyweight as Egypt being in the hands of the, or in the wind when it comes to election? It has to be a well-established elections with a president, talking again in general, that he or she is willing to lead the country into a new horizon, into a new paradigm. So that's why. How the world is doing it, I think there is very close eye on Egypt. You and I and the viewers know there is always criticism of any election in the world, and especially when there is some kind of this kind of heated competition and so on. You hear and you know what happened in the last American elections, the distrust or not only one, Trump versus Biden, George Bush versus the son versus Al Gore, and the split votes and so on, and the recounting. Why? Because countries are keen to make the process. It's not perfect, can never be perfect, but we want to seek perfection in terms of election, and we want to get the best possible candidate that can lead the country.
Indeed, indeed. That is indeed what Egypt is in need for. Before we move on with our episode, let me first take this second report. And Nazaha Coalition launched to monitor the 2024 Egyptian presidential elections. Let's know what's Nazaha and how are those groups and international international observers, international groups, international organizations even are getting together. Let's watch and know.
The Nazaha Coalition, which has supporters in 34 countries, has been launched to monitor Egypt's presidential elections. According to a statement released by the coalition, Mat for Peace, Development and Human Rights, along with 5 foreign organizations and 2 Egyptian organizations, announced the formation of the Nazaha or Integrity Coalition. The coalition includes the ECHO organization from Greece, the Ileska Foundation from Ghana, the Human Act from Romania, the Uganda National NGO Forum, UNNGOF, the Gals Forum International from Uganda, MAT for Peace, Development and Human Rights from Egypt, and Partners for Transparency from Egypt. The statement read that the establishment of the coalition stems from the shared belief among these organizations in the significance of combining local and international monitoring efforts to assess the electoral process per internationally recognizing standards for free and fair elections. Kofi Kankum, chair of the NGO group in Africa, affiliated with the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA, and founder of Iliseka Relief Foundation in Ghana, will lead the coalition. Meanwhile, Ayman Okeil, chairman of MAT for Peace, Development and Human Rights, will be the spokesperson for the coalition. The coalition affirmed its commitment to adhering to the rules and procedures set by the National Elections Authority, the NEA, regarding the participation of civil society organizations in monitoring the electoral process. Nazaha declared that the coalition is grounded in internationally recognized standards for ensuring the integrity and freedom of elections, as well as international instruments safeguarding human rights related to political participation and promoting fair competition. Okeil said that in 2018, the Nazaha coalition monitored Egypt's electoral process and declared it void of voter fraud and manipulation. Campaigns for the presidential elections will conclude on the 8th of December.
Right, welcome back, and indeed, we very much are in need to build the new republic, and this is exactly what we need at this upcoming stage. Back to you, Dr. Abu Zeid. And voting is a right and duty of every Egyptian. I'm not speaking about Egyptians inside Egypt, but also those abroad. How important is it for Egyptians to go to the ballot boxes and cast their voices, and why is that a duty and a right at the same time?
Okay. There is a famous saying that says, bad politicians are elected by those who decided not to vote. So one main reason why we want to go to vote, because we want to make our future. We want to choose our future. The future, by far, inshallah, in the hands of God, but we also need to select our best people to lead us into that future.
Indeed.
It's not enough that we sit here and criticize he or she working in that very difficult circumstances while we didn't do our duty of electing that person and supporting through his or her journey as much as possible. One little side note I want to say, I remember vividly living abroad for a number of years, not only while I'm doing my PhD, but beyond, that in the day of election, I see each and every citizen coming back to the university where I was working and where I was preparing for my doctorate, and there is a pin on their jacket or in their sweater or something, I voted. Like, it's a pride that you show to everyone that you have exercised this and you've done your share in terms of responsibility of voting. So it's a right, and it's a privilege, and it's a duty. Again, another side note, and not to terrify people, the Egyptian law puts some kind of penalty for those who don't vote unless they have a major excuse for that. Why are we saying that? In previous elections, there was some kind of pardon for people who did not do that, but why would the legislation put this kind of rule? Because definitely we want to encourage each and everyone to do that. It's like reporting something that's of importance. So it's a right, it's a privilege, and it's a duty for each one of us. And again and again and again, I hope to see more of the Egyptian people, particularly the youngsters, are doing that. One of the positive things that happened in previous elections that I want to see in this election and beyond, we had an increased number of female voters going to election. This is a very positive sign. If we talk about gender, man-woman, or women-men equality, it's not only in duties, in salaries, in responsibilities, but also in voting, in the ability to choose our leader and our representatives in the parliaments once that are voting and so on.
When we speak about voting or the presidential elections 2024, we are speaking about circumstances, enormous circumstances. It has been for this very particular year, and definitely starting since last year, the start of the Russian-Ukrainian war, and we're seeing a kind of geopolitical scene
Definitely.
that are really making the world different alliances, different scenes, different expectations, the whole world is going through unprecedented actions and big challenges, threats.
True, very true. This particular question, I can take hours to talk in responding to it, but let me take the beautiful question that you articulated and talk about three major areas here we're talking about. Politically speaking, yes, major wars are happening, horrific wars are taking place. Ukrainian-Russian war, the threat for the first time since Second World War, we have this kind of threat building up in Europe, the US, and so on. We see, on the other hand, from the other side of the world, some kind of little friction happening between North and South Korea, between China and Taiwan, and recently, this heavy and tragic events taking place, Palestine, Israel, and the region. So the first thing is you have this big change. It wasn't like that a few years ago. We thought that we are taking steps towards more stable, more peaceful world, but definitely the Russian-Ukrainian war took us a little bit back, and we hope that this war and other wars will stop very soon. The second one, and it was also in your, I was enjoying listening to your headline news, the climate change. I mean, climate change, if we talk to people as we talked 10, 15 years ago, it was something nice to hear. It's something secondary. It's something not imminent danger. But now you and I and the viewers feel it almost every week by this kind of rapid and sudden and abrupt changes. And what we feel is something, but what the other creatures, the land, the crops, the balance, the eco-balance around us is so big. So this is another big thing that the world leaders are not meeting in Dubai and previously in Egypt, except that this is a very important one. The third, of course, there are so many files and so many issues.
Definitely, this very particular file you're speaking about, the climate change issue, Egypt has been raising for years and years and has been speaking about it's dangerous for several years. I guess that was one big file Egypt has worked on. Please continue.
I just want to say something since you mentioned that. And Egypt said that and talked about that and raised its voice about this. Not only, and that's one of the great things about our nation, not only speaking with the Egyptian voice, but Egyptian with the African voice.
Indeed.
Because we contribute the least to the climate change and pollution and carbon emission, but Africa and Egypt, heaven forbid, unless we do serious changes, are going to pay heavy price about that. So we bear the consequences of this as such.
Indeed.
So that's an important, and that's why we're talking about the COP27 previously and the COP28 currently, yesterday and today launched in the United Arab Emirates. The third one is the economic file. The economic file. Look, and I'm not going to talk about Egypt only.
We're speaking about an upheaval.
Upheaval.
We're speaking about a very dangerous economic situation that is really threatening the whole world.
Exactly. I like what you said, and that's actually what I was about to say. Let's go to Italy, England, France, and hear how people are complaining from the increase in prices. We wish well for everyone, but look at the cost of energy, and now Europe and the world is going into winter and the need for energy and uprising cost and so on. So you're talking about economic situation that's a bit fragile, and the recession building up somewhere in different shapes and forms. And Egypt has its share of these problems.
If big powers like the United States and Russia are really suffering, and the inflation, the enormous inflation, the first time we see in years, in decades maybe, the United States is in such inflation rates. And
Europe too, by the way.
Definitely, because if it's the United States, then it reflects on Europe and vice versa. But we are seeing economic situation, turbulences in economic situations worldwide. So definitely.
Turbulences, and here is the thing, lack of ability to predict. Okay, we here is the whole world, we have been hit by something totally unexpected, the COVID-19. And something which put the whole world economy, Egypt as well, into some kind of imbalance for a little while, little or more. Talk about the wars in the Ukraine and Russia and what's happening, and we are impacted by that because of so many reasons, on top of which the wheat and the corn and the food supply chains.
Indeed.
And the third one we're talking about is that our income, I mean, talk about tourism. Who would want to go for tourism in an area that's there is even some doubt of instability and so on. So tourism, worldwide people are not very keen to move unless there is clarity. So all of that, you can buckle it up into a big economic uncertainties and new economic realities that any president in any country has to deal with in an imminent way.
Definitely, we have, and definitely the war now in Gaza, which is putting the whole Middle East in jeopardy. No, the whole world, actually.
Yes. And 70%, by this number was mentioned yesterday, 70% of the supply that's going into Gaza is Egyptian supplies. We're not bragging, we're
Yes.
not too proud of that, because we would have wished this not to be in a war circumstances, but when Palestinians or neighbors are in such kind, and brothers in such kind of heavy situation and tragic situation, as a matter of fact, you would help without counting really how much this will cost.
Indeed. I have only 2 minutes left for me here, and in those 2 minutes I would really want to understand two things. Files before the upcoming, the coming president, and the message Egypt wants to send to the whole world.
Files for the upcoming president, I would say them as I prioritize them. Safety and security. First file for any nation. Second is enhancing, and that's in Egypt 2030 vision, enhancing the quality of life for all Egyptians. Third, sustainable and green environment, and that will not happen by itself, and particularly much enhanced education, quality of education, and health services. Of course, there are many other things to talk about, but I think these are the four main issues, with all the economic challenges that all of these things cost time and money and effort and coordination and so on.
Thank God with that we have, in the past years, we started to go ahead with all those files, so I hope at this upcoming stage we'll be reaping the fruits.
Yes,
please,
yes.
the message.
And the message that Egypt sends, Egypt, and I'm only an Egyptian citizen here speaking, Egypt is a country that's proud of its history, of its heritage. Egypt is a country that has been doing its best to maintain stability in its region, in its continent, and a country that defends, never attacks, a country that preserves and never betrays. Egypt is looking forward to its new president, or newly elected president, to carry on with a heavy message, with a heavy tasks that will prosper Egypt, inshallah, that will prosper the world in general, and the region, and Africa in particular.
Indeed. And that's what we really need, and I guess the wisdom and reason say so.
Yes.
Professor Mohamed Naguib Abu Zeid, Professor at the ASU, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess that takes us to the end of this very special episode. Tomorrow or on Friday starts the elections, or the presidential elections abroad. We will be awaiting, and definitely Nile TV will be with you throughout the elections process at large. Many thanks for watching.